In 1969, the US government, out of fear of the Soviets that have been developing nuclear weapons, decided to invent a network of devices. If one device on the network was disabled, the others would still function, and thus it acted as a failsafe. This was the earliest version of the internet, and the government used it as a method of communication in case of an attack. Eventually, this early version of the internet was released to the public, and fast forward to today, almost everything we use somehow ties back to the internet. There is an unspoken about issue. There is a lack of privacy on the internet. Anything you do online can be traced back to you. Any websites you visit, programs you open, anything that is reliant on the internet can be tracked. To understand how, we need to understand a bit about networking. Put simply, we have IPs. An IP is your computer's identity. Your computer's IP, or identity, communicates to the server IP and requests something such as a site or a service. This method of communication is essential for you to be able to access the internet. You can't have no IP or else you can't communicate with the server. From its very nature, the internet is not created to be secure and private. The server hoster will always be able to view your activity. To have true privacy, you might want to take a tip or two from the people on the deepest layer of the internet. There are 3 levels of the internet. Level 1. The surface web. Anything a search engine like Google can find through search. A few examples are YouTube, social media, news, and the majority of what we visit every day are all here on the surface web. Level 2 is the deep web. There is little to no criminal activity. Servers on the deep web cannot be found by search engines, meaning the only way to access them is if you have a specific link given to you by someone. Level 3. The deepest layer of the internet has hidden services. These hidden service links end with .onion, just like websites on the surface web usually end with .com. Dark web services can be accessed via Tor, Freenet, 12p, and Riffle. These are all browsers that enable you to access the dark web. Now, you might be wondering, how does Tor work? Well, Tor uses an overlay network consisting of more than 7,000 relays and 6 IP servers to conceal location. Instead of sending a request from your IP instantly to the destination, it sends it to multiple other intermediate servers similar to a VPN. But unlike a VPN, instead of sending you to only one intermediate server, it sends you to multiple in a sequence, meaning your requests keep bouncing around, and this makes you really hard to find. Tor makes all users look the exact same so they cannot be distinguished from each other. Synonymous with crime is the deepest layer of the internet. The dark web. Here, drugs are sold. The most well-known service on the dark web is the Silk Road. Many would argue we should take down the Silk Road. Well, the authorities did try to take down the Silk Road, and they arrested the person who made it, Ross Ulbricht, and they put him in jail for 40 years, no parole. However, soon after taking down the Silk Road 1, the Silk Road 2 popped up. They tried once again to take it down. 3 popped up, 3.1, 4, and no matter how much the authorities tried, it seemed to be impossible. These copycat sites would be created in mere minutes after the original was taken down. But remember, the Silk Road is only one of many dark web illegal marketplaces. Among them aren't only drugs, there's much more on the dark web. There are forums that resemble Reddit, however are composed of leaked and classified information, as well as illicit discussions, terrorism, weapon trade, viruses, malware, and hitmen for hire can all be found on the dark web. The majority of the sites on the dark web, however, are 1. Either scams, or 2. Sites set up by the authorities to catch criminals. And even worse than all of that is the horrifying rumor of red rooms. Picture a streaming service, such as Twitch, in which you can scour millions of streams of people doing various things in which you get to interact to and talk to. Except this time, it's not innocent activities, it's torture of individuals and animals, in which viewers can interact with the host and tell them to perform certain acts on the victims. The dark web's currency is Bitcoin. It uses blockchain, making it both extremely secure and near impossible to trace. It's dubbed the anonymous currency, thus criminals rely on it. With all of this, you might think, why don't we just take the dark web down? Again, it's a lot more complicated. Since the government has released the internet to the public, this also means their enemies have access to it. And for the CIA to carry out many of their operations and projects, the surface web simply won't cut it. It's necessary for them to have anonymity, as to keep classified information classified. They had to find a way to make it impossible for the general public to view their activity, but still have the ability to use the internet regularly and communicate with each other. Thus, the government created the dark web and Tor. Using these two, they were now anonymous. You might be wondering, well, why did they release it to the public? Well, you see, there's a huge problem with anonymous browsing only being for the government. For example, if I host a site and everybody has no anonymity, but all of a sudden one person is anonymous, that is an instant tell that the person on my site is a CIA agent, which would thus blow their cover, and the entire purpose of being anonymous is to blend in. Thus, the government was forced to make Tor public. Now that more people were anonymous, it was impossible to tell who was a CIA agent and who was a regular everyday user. Meaning, it's either everyone or no one. There is no in between. According to the media, Tor is brimming with illegal activity. Since it makes people anonymous, only a criminal would need it. After all, a regular user would have nothing to hide, correct? Well, this is false. Only 3% of Tor users have ever visited the dark web. You don't have to have something to hide to want to have privacy. Tor can always be used for good. If I want to use my computer in a coffee shop, anyone there could easily view my activity and steal my information as well as my password. While if I'm using Tor, they cannot. Tor secures unsecure connections and makes them more private. Tor has multiple layers of encryption, just like an onion, thus the logo. Keep in mind, there are also only 3,000 dark web services. About 40% of them are actually legal. Things like private group chats are on there. Another 10% is unknown, as even if you have the link, you need a password to access them. Remaining 50% is actual illicit content. Dark web really isn't as bad as the media would like you to believe. I hope this video helped clear a lot of the misinformation hovering above the topic of the dark web and Tor. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a comment, subscribe, like, and share, as for the algorithm to push my videos to other users. Is it sit?